Brahman vision does not mix with the body, those situated in that body. Text 34. Yata prakasha yatyeka kritsnam lokam imam ravihi kshetram kshetri tata kritsnam prakashayati bharata. Translation. O son of Bharat, as the sun alone illuminates all this universe, so does the living entity, one within the body, illuminate the entire body by consciousness. Text 35. Kshetra kshetra gayor evam antaram jnana chakshusha bhuta prakriti moksham cha ye vidhuryanti te param. Translation. One who knowingly sees this difference between the body and the owner of the body and can understand the process of liberation from this bondage also attains to the supreme goal. Chapter 14, text number 1. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Param Bhuya Pravakshyami Jnananam Jnanamuttamam Yajgyatva Munaya Sarve Param Siddhim Atogata. Translation. The Blessed Lord said, "Again, I shall declare to you the supreme wisdom, the best of all knowledge, knowing which all the sages have attained to the supreme perfection." Hare Krishna. Text number 2. Idam jnanam upashritya mama sadharmyam agataha sargepi nopajayante pralayena vittanti cha. Translation. By becoming fixed in this knowledge, one can attain to the transcendental nature, which is like my own nature. Thus established, one is not born at the time of creation, nor disturbed at the time of dissolution. Last text, 3. Mama yonir mahad brahma tasmin garbham dadamyaham sambhava sarva bhutanam tato bhavati bharata. Translation. The total material substance called Brahman is the source of birth, and it is that Brahman that I impregnate, making possible the births of all living beings, O son of Bharata. Back to text number 28 on page number 633 here in the temple room. Translation. One who sees the supersoul accompanying the individual soul in all bodies and who understands that neither the soul nor the supersoul is ever destroyed actually sees. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Anyone who can see three things, the body, the proprietor of the body, and or individual soul, and the friend of the individual soul, combined together by good association, is actually in knowledge. Those who are not associated with the soul's friend are ignorant. They simply see the body, and when the body is destroyed, they think that everything is finished. But actually, it is not so. After the destruction of the body, both the soul and the supersoul exist, and they go on eternally in many various moving and unmoving forms. The Sanskrit word Parameshvaram is sometimes translated as the individual soul because the soul is the master of the body. And after the destruction of the body, he transfers to another form, and that way he is master. But there are others who interpret the word, this Parameshvaram to be the supersoul. In either case, both the supersoul and the individual soul continue. They are not destroyed. One who can see in this way can actually see what is happening. So this chapter is very nice. It breaks down details of this material nature and how the soul interacts with this material dimension of existence, which is illusory because it's temporary. So Prabhupada says that the person who is in knowledge can actually see three things: the body, the kshetra, the proprietor of the body or the soul, and the friend of the individual soul, the super soul. So what happens when one has this knowledge? Well, they know at least that they should treat all living beings equally, because if in my heart is the super soul or the supreme friend, and in your heart is the super soul, supreme friend, that same supreme soul, Krishna, that I have in my heart and is connecting all the hearts of people and living entities and all living entities, then only a sane person would understand that I have to appreciate this form and the body, the soul, and the super soul within. So then, with this realized knowledge, this vijnana, then ends unnecessary violence and destruction to other living entities. Of course, there is some necessity to eat, to sustain ourselves in this world. One living entity is food for another. So there's some sort of violence occurred when we offer prasadam, even because it's vegetarian food. It's vegetables, which which vegetation also has souls and life. There is one devotee was making this point very drastic, and he was saying that when you go out to that garden and you chop out that cauliflower, chop off the head of the cauliflower, it is a form of violence. He made it very graphic. It was pretty funny, the way he described it. But it's true, there's some violence incurred. That's the nature of this material, jivasya jivanam, that one living entity is food for another. So that is the nature of this world. So the very nature of this world is full of suffering on that basis, right? On that characteristic of the material world is a hints that this world is a place of suffering, right? So that's unfortunate. But Krishna says that just offer this food, patram pushram balam toyam yomi bhaktya prayachati tadaham. He said, just offer this leaf, fruit, flower, water to me with love, and I will accept it for you from these sinful reactions, these reactions that occur. So, yes, a devotee doesn't even want to harm one living entity, even a vegetable or a flower, or what to speak of the more sentient beings like bees and flies and animals, cows. But if you're blinded to that knowledge that there is the super soul, or there's a soul within the body of another living being, then it doesn't matter to you so much what happens to them. It's just another form. And then if you believe that there's no life after death, or you might believe that there's some sort of heaven, but but such knowledge is incomplete, and therefore there's so much strife in this world, because practically no one is in knowledge of this, that of the soul, the super soul, and the body, the differences, and the understanding those three factors. There was some devotee explained to me about a very senior devotee, spiritual master in this movement, and he was walking in Mayapur, which is a holy place of Lord Chaitanya's birth, and we have a big spiritual city there. It's an incredible place. And he was walking on the road, and he stepped on a flower, and he kept walking, and this devotee was some distance behind him, and then this senior devotee, he stopped, after some distance after walking on this flower, and he turned around and looked at the flower and paid pranams to the flower, and then kept walking in his direction. So that's pretty sensitive. Of course, in the Dham, these living entities who take birth in these holy places are not ordinary living entities. They're taking birth for a special reason. So these are some points about this verse. One who actually sees. When you practice Krishna consciousness, you chant Hare Krishna and you perform devotional service, naturally this knowledge will manifest in your heart. And that is why this process of Krishna consciousness is so what's the word? So drastic or so different from other processes, you could say, that you may have tried, because simply by cleansing the heart and consciousness, this knowledge awakens and we get direct realization of our soul, the difference between our soul and the body that we have. We become detached from the body, become detached from the material world, and then we see that the living being, the super soul, is in all bodies. And then naturally all the good qualities of the saintly persons manifest within us simply by chanting Hare Krishna and serving Krishna in various capacities. Naturally, these qualities develop. So when we go places of meet people that we used to know previously, it becomes kind of difficult because they don't have that knowledge, unfortunately. And then all their activities are blinded by some mode of ignorance. And so then it's like, whoa, yikes. People are eating meat. Ooh, it's pretty intense. Whereas before, having this kind of knowledge, for myself at least, I didn't even think about it. It's like, yeah, that's just what we eat. It's what we have. I don't have to think about violence that incurred. Maybe if I did, it was kind of like, I didn't really think more about it. But as soon as I met devotees of Krishna and associated with them, and they told me about offering food to Krishna and being vegetarian, I got interested. I became fixed that, okay, yeah, I'm going to be a vegetarian. It makes so much sense. So this is why good association is important. And association with devotees gives you these understandings. At least there's always that pressure there. Like we were talking today, some people, when they come in association with devotees, naturally the mind starts to consider all these different thoughts because of the transcendental association of devotees. And so sometimes people kind of avoid it. Like when you come in association with devotees, then you're forced to kind of look into dark places in your consciousness. And then, you kind of it sheds light in all those places. But people that are in darkness, they are not interested to learn about that or to know about it. So such people have a hard time in association of devotees. So spiritual life is somewhat bitter in the beginning. Although in the beginning it's also very sweet, but then it is also bitter in many ways. And it is explained that we have this state of jaundice, which I didn't even know what jaundice was until I started reading Nectar of Instruction. But it's not very common in where I was from, I guess. Did anybody know about jaundice before it was a thing? You kind of knew about it. Well, you guys are educated. I was low life. But but I didn't know about it. But it's so we hear about jaundice, how you're in a diseased state, and even if you taste very sweet things, they taste bitter. But the remedy of jaundice is to keep tasting sweet things. So Krishna consciousness is very sweet because Krishna is the Rasa Raj, and he is the king of all rasas, of all mellows and moods of happiness, and particularly madhurya or sweetness. That is a special characteristic of Krishna, is that his mood of love, loving him and him loving you, is very sweet, supremely sweet. There's a beautiful song that is one of my favorite songs. It's called the Madhurya Astakam, and it's glorifying Krishna's sweetness in 8 verses. It's very beautiful. So, I got kind of lost how I got here to this point. Yes, jaundice. So spiritual life can be bitter in the beginning, but we have to understand that it is sweet. We have to take the humble position that I'm just not purified. I'm just not pure to know, to taste it, taste the sweetness. One who has jaundice, I can just theoretically understand because I don't know. I've never had it, but I can understand. This person is tasting some sugar candy is very bitter, like super bitter. So that person, like, no, I don't want that. It's disgusting, If you've ever had something very bitter, it's like, heck. So that jaundiced person is thinking, like, sometimes we're like that in spiritual life. I don't want to chant. But theoretically, at least, we have to understand by hearing that actually chanting, taking prasadam, association with devotees, it's actually very sweet, but we're just in a diseased state of consciousness. So we have to just stick with it. And the thing is, if we stick with it, then the sweetness will come. Eventually. It might take an hour, a day, a few minutes, whatever it might take. But Krishna will give his mercy, and you'll taste the sweetness of Krishna consciousness. You'll taste the sweetness of association with devotees, chanting the holy name, the philosophy, various services, everything. I was realizing, like, Krishna consciousness, you can engage in Krishna consciousness in so many unlimited ways, and you can be satisfied in all respects. You can satisfy your material desires, your material desires will be satisfied. Your spiritual desires will be satisfied. Maybe not all your material desires, because by serving Krishna, he doesn't necessarily give you all of your material desires, but he'll give you what you really desire, and he might also give you things that you desire materially, but it's for purification. Meaning, maybe you really want a lot of money, so Krishna may give you a lot of money by serving Krishna, but then somehow or other you'll come to the realization, if you're fortunate, that actually this really wasn't what I wanted. Of course, to come to that realization, you have to stay strict and strong in your principles of Bhakti Yoga, practice of principles, and then you'll get realization, proper realization. So you might get what you want materially, but it won't be really what you really want. So Krishna is looking to give you what you really, really want, which is Krishna prema, or pure love for Krishna. So that sweetness of all these activities, it is there. So we have to just understand, we have to hear, we have to have faith in that, and then we have to just apply the process and keep chanting, keep taking prasadam, keep doing all these things, and then Krishna's mercy will come. At some point, it will come and you'll feel like, why was I so in my head? It's so simple. Serve Krishna, surrender to Krishna. So that's my realization. So there's so much you can do in Krishna consciousness. It can be satisfied in all aspects that you really desire. It can be satisfied, if you want money, you might be able to get it. If you want to hear beautiful sounds, you'll be able to hear beautiful kirtan. And if you want to see beautiful things, you'll be able to see in Krishna's forms. And if you want to hear about violent things, you can hear about that in Mahabharata, where you hear about warriors and fighting scenes and amazing warrior kshatriyas. Or if you want knowledge, there's so much knowledge. There's so much. If you want to know history, there's so much history to know in the Puranas and the Bhagavatam, and et cetera, et cetera. So you'll be happy in all respects if you take to Krishna consciousness. That's just the point I'm trying to make. And unfortunately, not many people take it, because manushanam sahasreshu kashid yatatisare yatatam api siranam kashinman veti tatvataha. That out of thousands among people, one may endeavor for perfection. That out of those who have, and even out of those, one who has achieved perfection, hardly one knows me in truth. So we can see that the probability of someone taking to Krishna consciousness the formula is already given by Krishna out of thousands of people. So it shouldn't be so much of a surprise if there's not many people in the diamond shop. It isn't a surprise, right? Like if you go in the plaza and you pass by the diamond shop or the jewelry store, there's usually like hardly anyone in there, But whoever comes in, they're paying thousands of dollars for one thing. So they get that valuable thing, and the people get a lot of revenue from that. But it only takes a few people to sustain your business. So Krishna consciousness is like that. Of course, we want to try our best to reach thousands and thousands of people, so then we can, bring those few people to Krishna. Krishna can't do anything, though. He can make this whole city Krishna conscious in a moment, if he wants. Prabhupada said like that. I believe it was Tamal Krishna Maharaj. Krishna can give us the whole world in like a few days, but what will you do with it? You're not ready to guide the whole world. So it's interesting. Okay, so we're kind of getting off of the topic of the verse. Are there any comments or questions about this? Yes, Bhakta Avatar. You were saying a few minutes ago that if we just chant and take prasadam, that we will get Krishna's mercy. And I've heard this a lot, and I've always had this question, and I've never asked it, so I'm asking it now. It's like, that makes sense, but also, what does that mean? Is it like, I'll just, continue doing all my nonsense, spacing out, and I took prasadam today, I chanted my rounds today, I didn't do them attentively, but I ate way too much. One day Krishna will be merciful upon me. Or is it that simply by chanting and taking prasad, one day I'll be like, whoa, I'm a rascal and I need to be more serious. So how does it work exactly? Is it just all of a sudden boom, Krishna's yeah. Or, do I come with this
do I hit this like wall, and I'm like, pff, and then like I realized that I actually need to take more shelter of the holy name of devotees, prasadam. So I don't know, maybe if you could share some insight on that.
Well, we can be complacent, where we're just stagnant in our spiritual life. We have the knowledge of what we should do, but we're not actually doing it. We have the knowledge of how we should improve, but we're not actually improving. So then we're complacent and we're just going on the same old thing, you know. And you'll get some mercy by taking prasadam and all that. But we're always being nudged to be improving. That's the nature of spiritual life. Is it's ever increasing, it's dynamic, it's ecstatic. It's not, you know, it's like it's not stopping. It's like a river that flows and you're trying to hold back the river. No. Stop. But it just keeps going. So then you're feeling that pressure, like that always moving pressure. And so Krishna does it in different ways. Knowledge, you know, the material world is pushing us. What was I reading recently? I'm trying to remember something. Anyway, my point I'm trying to make is that we're being pushed by Krishna or we're being pushed by Maya. That is the nature of us as being Tatastha Shakti, this marginal energy of the Lord. We can be influenced by the external energy or the illusory energy, and we can also be influenced by the internal energy or the spiritual energy. And so we can't just be in Brahmajyoti land, you know. We have to be moving. We're going to be getting pushed towards one direction or the other. But for us in our disease state, we have to be pushing very strongly towards and fighting the illusory energy, pushing towards the spiritual energy, because we've become diseased. We become out of touch. So, yeah, we should try not to be complacent. But what my understanding and realization is that even if my realization that happens to me, like maybe on a daily basis, is that I'll have so much trouble in my mind. Like my mind's giving me so much problems about something. Just it can be anything really that's disturbing the mind. Like this morning, I couldn't, for some reason, I woke up and I couldn't stop feeling anxiety about some construction issue that I was dealing with. And it was just like forefront of my mind literally the whole morning. And I was just trying to tolerate it because that's all I could really do. Just like tolerate it. I couldn't really do anything about it. Some morning time and trying to focus on sadhana. But it was pretty intense kind of experience, just having this anxiety and stress about this thing. But I just stuck with my services, and I tried to focus on chanting and my deity service I was doing, and then after the morning program, I took prasadam and started talking to Murari Prabhu about different ideas and points, and then like the anxiety was just gone. It was like I realized that was Krishna's mercy, because I was in such an anxious position, and Krishna's devotee is here to relieve my burden, simply just by revealing myself and the devotee giving knowledge and understanding and association. So that is a way to get Krishna's mercy, is exchanging that love between the devotees by inquiring submissively and asking for advice and then getting advice. So, it's a big question. How does mercy come? It comes in so many different ways. And I was speaking to someone about this. Bhashkananda was giving the class on Sunday, and I was asking, like, how do we know if we're like how do we know that Krishna is reciprocating with us? And his point was that it's through the super soul, and it's, this is my paraphrase, but it's self-evident to us that it is Krishna, coming from Krishna, because of the experience that we have. So you could think, well, it's just some ordinary conversation with this devotee, nothing special, and people get relieved like that in therapy, But it wasn't just that. It was like, really felt like Krishna was helping. Krishna was there. So those are some thoughts about your question. Yes, Bhakta. David? So go on taking prasadam. Go on chanting. Go on feasting, dancing. But we have to want it, we have to try for it, get some effort. That's the whole Damodar month theme, is that we're supposed to do effort, and Krishna's mercy comes. When he wants, on his time.
So like, kind of following up on that question, I was wondering if you could speak about like the flip side of like maybe being more like relaxed. Like for me, I find like some of my, like, how do you deal with like the guilt? I think like sometimes, like for me, like I'll be like, oh man, I ate this food and I didn't give it to Krishna first. Like I forgot. Or like, maybe like if you do the rounds and you're not fully paying attention or like conscious, like how, like sometimes like I might get anxiety for like a couple minutes after, like just like, oh man, like I didn't really focus on that one. So how do you work on the flip side of that, and still be able to like kind of keep doing everything that you're doing, keep chanting and everything, but also at the same time, like realizing that mercy that Krishna has for you?
Well, the guilt is a great impetus to progress. It's Krishna's mercy, actually. That is Krishna's mercy, because we know where we want to be, or at least we have some idea of like how we want to progress. So we're feeling guilty that we're not there, and that is a good impetus. It gives good motivation to try it next time. So Krishna consciousness is a gradual process. We get so caught up because we're so conditioned in this culture to want things right away. Now I want this fast food now. If my pizza's 10 minutes late, I'm cussing at the manager and all the people in the store, so it's like we're conditioned for that because it's such a passionate culture that we want things now. So that may not always be the case in our practice, and it's not the case. Generally, somebody just doesn't become fully self-realized, purely chanting, doing everything properly, never always thinking of Krishna, and coming from the material world to the purest platform. There's some time that it takes to develop that, reawaken that love for Krishna. So that means that there's some gradual process of Krishna consciousness, gradual progression through the stages of bhakti yoga, starting with faith, associating with devotees, finding a spiritual master, serving, and then removing the unwanted things within the heart, then becoming fixed up, and then getting taste attachment, for Krishna, and then so on to the highest stages of spiritual realization. So, yeah, it's a gradual process, and it's practice. That's what Krishna says. How to control the mind is by detachment and practice. That is how to control the mind, to bring it under control and be able to really be linked in yoga, really be linked with Krishna. Detachment, that, we're patient and we're not attached to being pure soul now, but we know it's going to take time, and so we're working on it. Practice. We're just next rep, next mantra, and yeah, you might go through a day, 2 days, a year, a few months where you're not practicing maybe so good, or you're at a lot lower level than you were, but you're always thinking about, if you're sincere about it, you're always thinking about, how do I get back to that? How do I improve? How do I do this? And it may take time to get back. But my realization after practicing for a few years is that even if I go through a month or 2 months of difficulty in my mind and practice, if I just keep on continuing, keep working at it, great progress is made. And we have to continually hear about the process and the knowledge of Krishna, and hear about these things so that we can stay strong in our faith to keep practicing and to keep trying our best. So that helps be inspired to do better by reading the scriptures. And it takes a lot of humility, because this Krishna consciousness is not so easy. We're going for the highest realization of the absolute truth, and that's like, the most you're in the most competitive field, you could say, or you're in the most like difficult, challenging Olympic games, which is becoming, getting this gold medal of pure love of God. So it's not a cheap thing. So we have to take the humble position and understand what the ideal is. So that we hear from Krishna in Bhagavad Gita, and we hear from the devotees of Krishna in Bhagavatam, what is the ideal standard of pure devotional service. And then we have to accept that is the ideal, what Shastra says we have to accept, and then try our best to move towards that. And in most cases, we fall short. So, but we have to keep the humble position that this is the truth, and I have to progress towards this higher thing, versus maybe justifying why it's not higher or good to progress towards. Or like you can go in your mind, you can be chanting, focusing on chanting, and your mind is going here, going there, and then your mind might start telling you like, well, I'm never going to get there anyway. I'm never going to feel the pure bliss of chanting Krishna's name, or it's going to take many lifetimes. So then your practice may have that mood, continue to have that mood by the mind's conception. It's giving you or making you attached to. So then when you're chanting, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, or you're doing things while you're chanting. So the mind has this powerful trick of convincing you about some misconception so that you can practice less seriously. But the funny thing is, it's a foolish mind, because it even, when you practice Krishna consciousness, it even knows that Krishna consciousness gives you the highest satisfaction. But still, the conditioned mind is that it'll try to force you back to a lower state of purity of practice and a lower consciousness, even though that is going to continue its own suffering. Isn't that interesting? I find that like so bewildering. Sometimes I'll practice Krishna consciousness, I'll feel very satisfied. I'm like, got a good japa period or whatever, and it was intense, it was a struggle, it was a fight. And then afterwards my mind's like, okay, things are good, get on with my day, fun services. But then like quickly after that, then the mind will start its attack. No, let's get back to that low level of consciousness. When I was dissatisfied, let's get back to it. It was so great. This is what life is. Or, people say that in the material world, right? Suffering, it's part of life, If you're not suffering, then people become a little disturbed. Like, why aren't you depressed? Why aren't you feeling sad? Like, we're all in it, we're all doing it. Let's do it together. But then you're practicing Krishna consciousness, you're so happy. And they're just like, this doesn't make sense. Like, I remember I thought that, I had that realization because when I looked up ISKCON, I saw all these pictures of devotees and they're all like, beaming and happy and dancing and whatever. And I was thinking, it's like, they're just in it for happiness? Like, that's selfish. We gotta be like, we gotta experience the highs and the lows, not just go for happiness. I was thinking like that. It was a misconception, like anything. So I think people think like that when they see devotees all happy. It's like, I know that one of my brothers, he also feels that way. He was on a spiritual path with me, and he also felt like, you just left everything, like what? And I was like, man, I was miserable. we were both miserable. Somehow we were. And so he kind of felt like you left, there's this thing, like there's this vibe, like you left the miserable life with me, we were doing it, we were doing the spiritual thing and we were both miserable, but we were doing it. And, so there's some vibe there. Love that. Okay, we are over time. Thank you very much. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai. Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol.